listened to in the gospel reading today. But the thing that stood out to me is the portion where Jesus says, if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. If you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, and I think maybe Jesus may have used a little stronger word there, you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you're offering your gift at the altar, when you come to this altar, remember your relationship with your brother and sister. And remember if they have something against you, and go and be reconciled, and then come to the altar and offer your gift. So if you're angry with a brother or sister, you'll be liable to judgment. Notice that Jesus doesn't say if you disagree with a brother or sister. The times Jesus lived were full of disagreement, full of hostility, not only to the Romans who occupied the land, who were there in Palestine with a heavy foot on the neck of those people. But the Jews themselves had many factions. The Pharisees against the Sadducees, against the Essenes, against the Zealots, and on and on. Even in the small village of Nazareth where Jesus grew up, there were estimated to be only a few hundred families. And I can tell you that many of them had way different views and opinions than somebody who lived next door. They were almost all certainly poor farmers and laborers. They lived in small, crowded houses where everyone slept and ate in a single room. So no wonder that they had to live by rules that allowed for a difference of opinion, but could not tolerate outrageous anger or violence in the family. And Jesus' family was no different. He had at least 4 brothers that we know about, and who knows how many sisters. It was a packed house. And so he was obviously raised to a standard of manners that place a premium on peaceful existence. Now, if you've ever known any really large, tight-knit families, you know that there are arguments and disagreements, and they can be intense and verbal, but they are still one family, one people, one heritage, just as we are in this room. No matter what our ethnic, racial, or former religious background is, we are still all God's people. We are still all brothers and sisters. So does that not place upon us the need to pray for peace among us? We don't have a responsibility but one, and that is to respect, to live in mutual respect. Now, we can vote for Apollos, or Paul, or James the Just, who was the brother of Jesus, or for anybody who's convinced us of the right way to go about things. But we are still ruled by the one God who is over us all, the one God whose law is, more than any other thing, to love one another. When we indulge in violent protest, or call each other vicious names, or lend our support to those who do these things, we are liable to judgment, not only by our neighbors, but by God. I do not advocate that we become sheep led to the slaughter. This, thankfully, is a country of laws and free speech. Nor do I advocate political discourse from this pulpit. That's not appropriate to me in this house of God. Let your arguments be civil and take place with love and respect for each other outside this place. We worship here in common. Don't take your anger into this house. Be outside of this place, outside of even the family that we are when we worship together. When we are there to do God's work for others together. When we are God's hands and feet and hearts to the other. Instead, devote yourself among your brothers and sisters to the worship and the work of God, who has blessed us with so much that's rich in our lives. And seek to share those riches with others who are less fortunate. Whatever your individual beliefs, I don't know a single person here that I have ever met in this church family who is not open to sharing what they have, no matter how much or how little, with those who have so much less. Now, many of you may know that I've sort of extended my deacon's duties to hospital chaplain in the last few weeks. And I've been blessed by a multitude of people with overwhelming circumstances in their lives who are grateful for a friendly visit, a friendly face, a caring touch, a moment together in prayer. I don't ask any questions, nor do I want any answers about their beliefs outside their search for God and God's meaning for them. All I want to do is help them in that search. Help them find some peace in the assurance that they are not alone. That God walks that journey with them just as God walks that journey with each of you, with all of us, with all of God's children. My wish is that we can all work together to provide comfort and support to others. There are many ways. There are many opportunities. Some large, some small. There are many opinions. Some large, some small. And concerning those opinions, I'm reminded of a story about the Jewish community in New York in the early days of the 20th century. In those days, the only way of getting information, the only media that those folks had was newspapers. And there were lots of them. And there were lots of Jewish newspapers because there was this huge influx of migrants from all over the world. And there was a large Jewish community. And the Jewish press was publishing editorials right and left about how terrible it was, how awful it was, that Jewish boys were being seduced and robbed of their heritage by the common and rowdy game of baseball. The whole country, especially on the East Coast, was baseball crazy. You know, it was just a baseball world in New York in those days. And so, among all of that rhetoric, among all of those newspapers, there was one editor who loudly proclaimed that Jewish boys should learn to play baseball because they were in America and needed to learn how to be Americans, no matter their religion or their social status or their ghetto poverty. Baseball would help them understand what it meant to be American, to play together, to do something together. So Jews and other minority groups, including Italians, African Americans, Latinos, Asians, and many, many others, have all used baseball to help them find a common ground as Americans. No politics involved. So we honor Hank Greenberg, the first Major League Jewish ball player, and Hank Aaron, and Jackie Robinson, and all those other great players, no matter what their race or religion is. Even Joe DiMaggio was treated as a second-class citizen because he was Italian at a time when we were at war with Italy. So today, I pray that we seek common ground, that we seek common worship, that we seek mutual respect, not based on hatred or mean-spirited comments. We can be really competitive in our lives, but mainly respectful of the other team. Jesus was a member of the other team. In our illustration on today's church bulletin, he's shown having a conversation with his disciples in Emmaus after his resurrection. Now, it looks to me in the artist's representation here that there may have been a little difference of opinion going on. But you know what? Nobody's striking out at each other. They had differences of opinion of where the Jesus movement was headed and how to get there. I don't doubt that they all had goals in common with Jesus, but it would have been normal for them to have different ways to get there. Paul and Peter and James were famous for their disagreements that we read in the Gospels. And, you know, they certainly did have those disagreements. And Jesus would have listened to those and counseled them. But I think he would have let them speak. The Gospels are full of interesting disagreements and hesitation among the followers of Jesus. And there were many besides just the 12. It wasn't just those 12 apostles. There were hundreds of followers. And it would be unnatural for all of those people to agree on everything. This conversation with Jesus, our Lord, sounds to me like almost a perfect moment in history when people are allowed to speak their mind openly. Now, it was not thus always so. History is really, if you read it, more about rulers who shut down rational discourse. And the church is, I hate to say this, the prime example of that censorship in the last 2,000 years. But Jesus is about listening and comforting and helping us see God in all people. All people. So I say stand your ground. Stand your ground for what you believe. Honor the beliefs of others. If you're going to follow Jesus, be prepared to argue your case with kindness, with respect, with an open mind. And remember that we are all brothers and sisters. Keep your goal in sight. As George Carlin says in his famous comparison of baseball to football, strive to go home. Don't worry about the clock. It doesn't matter. Time is there for a comeback if your team is down. Just go to bat with a good attitude. Let God guide your play. And you'll end up in His Hall of Fame.